Welcome to the Bullish podcast, where faith meets mental performance. Let this be your guide on a journey of growth and resilience. Each week, we dive into conversations with top performers, exploring the mindset and faith that fuel their successes. This is the Bullish podcast. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Bullish podcast. And if you joined us last week, we had an incredible conversation with a fellow worship leader, Q Scott, who just discussed his walk, his testimony, his faith and drive, and how he maintains his passion in staying well-grounded in a world of just opportunities and growth, and really just dividing that self and God's calling for you. And it's an incredible interview. It's an awesome conversation. So check it out if you haven't yet. As well as the rest of season 3, we've had some great conversations. And today we are diving into something that I love chatting about, and that's growth mindset, choices, and just accepting the situations that we're in and how to overcome through just behaviors and everyday choices. And the reason why I really love talking about focusing on the process versus the outcome is because there are so many studies done about how looking at that in different way, changing your perspective from just the outcome of everything we do, especially in athletics or even in music, the championships, the rewards, the scores, the stats, shifting that to the process can actually affect your perception of life and how fulfilling it is. There are studies that are done that focuses on this. One that I think of where it looked at recognizing these minor little accomplishments along the way actually produced 22% more of being satisfied with your life and feeling more fulfilled, which is incredible. There's another one on growth mindset. There's still a lot of study, a lot of area of research that can be done to look at and analyze the results. But so far, we've recognized that understanding that intelligence can be grown, strength can be grown, all these different factors that can be grown versus this is just how smart you are or this is just how strong you are, has demonstrated that individuals with a growth mindset are able to overcome hardships and build that resilience and grit and keep driving forward because they're focused on the fact that you can grow versus this is just who I am. And that difference we dive into today when with my guest, who is awesome. He's a gold medalist in the Paralympics and has an incredible story, and he's a therapist as well. And so he adds these two different sides of the athletic psychology world, which is awesome. Super stoked to have him on the Bullish podcast. We have Tahl Leibovitz on the show today. Tahl, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are.
My name is Tahl Leibovitz, and I am I'm a social worker, Paralympic gold medalist. So am I missing something? Yeah, probably, and a human being. Okay. Yeah.
I love that. And I actually didn't know that you were a licensed social worker prior to hopping on. So this will be really good to get your insight and just meld it in with some of your background. That would be sweet.
Okay, this sounds like it's going to be a fantastic podcast, I think. And it's already starting with, again, I really like that background. It's really nice, super professional. I'm going to have to work. That's what I've taken out of this so far, is to be able to say, okay, although, this is not a bad background. Like, this mine is terrible, but it's okay. Okay.
No, your background's good. It's very nice. It's clean. Okay. It's professional. I think the viewers will like it. So you mentioned about being a Paralympic athlete. So what sport were you in, and what got you and led you into that direction for your athletics?
Okay, the sport I'm in is table tennis, and most people probably know a little bit about table tennis today because there are these what do they call them? Autonomous ping pod training centers, and they're all over the place in the city. They're kind of quite well known now. And it's this place where you can go in, and there's nobody there. You just kind of sign up on this app, and you're in this. It's almost like you're transported. You're in this Olympic level place. I can't really describe it. And some people love it. They go all the time. I always say people should try it because it's a unique experience. I don't know how I got into a tangent for that. But that's kind of how people might know table tennis today, because that's very well known. Yeah. And that's kind of a sport where it's like running, boxing, and chess at the same time, probably.
Yeah, that's a lot of very different sports melded into one sport. How did you find yourself competing at such a high level in table tennis?
Okay, that's a good question. And I would see where I started the South Queens Boys and Girls Club. Fortunately or unfortunately, I spent my youth living on the street when I was a boy.
Okay.
So, I ended up at the boys club. It was about 1989, was it 175? 14 years old. Yeah, that's when I started. And really changed a lot of things for me. I mean, it was a lot of things because, you just have something you can focus on, something that you could do. And I kind of got obsessed with the sport. Actually, not kind of, I did. And then that took me to, I never thought I would be good at it. I couldn't beat anybody, especially at the boys club. And years later, I transferred to a place called Lost Battalion Hall. It was like a parks department. Didn't even win a point off anybody. I mean, but you stay long enough. Isn't there a rule on that? If you spend 100 hours on something, you're better than 95% of the people. So,
yeah, I think it's like 18 minutes a day for a year. If that's all you spend, like, then you're better than like 97% of the people, something like that.
I'm gonna steal that. That's a good statistic. I probably spent about 20,000 hours. So yeah, that puts me ahead of most people. Yeah.
Man, so you're like legendary level then if you're spending that much time playing.
Yeah, not at first, but yeah, you get to. Yeah, you don't think you're gonna be so good. It's like you do something because you love it, and then you become really good at it. Then you forget why you did it. So you got to go back and say, oh, why am I playing this? I really enjoy this sport. I really like it. Music, you listen to music, you like it. Then all of a sudden someone's like, hey, you got to study music for 4 years. After the 4 years, you probably end up like, maybe you don't like it so much.
That can definitely happen. And you said something just now that I think resonates with a lot of people moving into professionals is you do something that you love for so long, and then all of a sudden you go into something with it, and you have to remind yourself why you love it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what was that mind shift for you where it's like, oh, I have to remind myself that I still love actually doing this thing I'm doing?
Yeah, I think that it helped. Well, there's kind of like when you want to achieve something and do something well, you really have to be in that. It's like when I was at the Pan American Games in 2019, and you speak with these Olympic psychologists, people that do my kind of work, they tell you all these different things. Oh yeah, you know what? If you feel pressure, just do this. They'll give you like 10 things. Focus on the ball, do this, and you have all whatever it is. It could be you're playing in the Olympics, could be I play in the Paralympics, but and then you try those things, and then like nothing works. You're like, wait a second. So there's one thing that did work, and that goes back to exactly what you're saying. So long story short, yeah, sitting there with the sports psychologist, with the best psychologist in the world, you're sitting there and they're like giving you all this stuff, and then none of it works. Not none of it, most of it. And then the one thing that works is where you kind of tell yourself exactly that, like, you know what? If I don't win this match, it's okay. All right, fine. I'll do my best, but I'm still whatever. For me, it's like, all right, I could still do therapy. I could do something else. But in therapy, for example, and again, it would take too long to go into all that stuff, especially rational emotive therapy and some of these other ones, they talk about thinking in absolutes. That means if you don't give yourself a choice and you don't give yourself an option, probably you may experience discomfort.
That's that kind of reminds me of just like that Carol Dweck growth mindset type of thing, right? Like just thinking about the outcomes all the time, and how much did that play into that? I mean, you talked about absolutes, and we can dive into that because I know that people who listen love to hear just some of those theories behind that and what can get us stuck and what can help us overcome these barriers. So are you cool with diving into that a little bit, like expanding on just that absolutes that you mentioned right there?
Sure. And that's a really good point. There's definitely a lot of different directions to go in, but you look at Art of War. I'm not saying people study that, but one of the things they talk a lot about is your enemy. You have to give them a choice. You never really want to, have them where they have no, and that you look at anxiety. Anxiety is always future based. It's always a finite event. Something will be the worst, but life isn't really like that. There's nothing. No matter how bad something happens, there's something else happens. Like, so there's really no events in life where it's just the final event and everything is over. So I think it's possibilities of saying, but if you trap yourself, whatever it might be, public speaking, whatever you're trying to do in your life, you're like, okay, I have to win the marathon or run the marathon, let's say. I have to get a PhD, or I have to make the Olympics, or whatever it could be, or I have to run 6 marathons and get they have a thing, right? You run 6 marathons, it's like this, you get this medal or something. But when you tell yourself you have to do something now, You're in objective reality, and the challenge with life itself is life is very subjective,
Yeah.
right? So that's really where I think it can be a little bit problematic, because there's no real absolutes in some things in life. That there's subjectivity, there's possibilities, and when you say this needs to be done, you're kind of closing off all possibilities. You're saying, all right, and you want to do that when you set goals, but you also want to say, all right, you're going to fail. And I guess that's the lesson. You will fail. When you do something, you're going to fail, at some point. And if you got to tell yourself, right, if I fail, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. And then at some point, you do it enough times, then you reach your goal.
What do you think is the development of that fear of failure that's been, it seems like it's gotten so much more weight in the athletes that I talk to, it just seems like that fear of failure is so much more prominent today. Where, like you said, like failure is just going to be part of this journey, especially if you're going to want to, work towards higher levels, you're going to be entering into spaces you've never been before, right? So you're going to make mistakes, but for some reason, this fear of failure seems so much heavier in today's young athletes, who are aspiring. Where do you think that comes from?
I think that's probably connected to self-image and sense of self, that someone connects their well-being to an outcome. And the challenge is that the outcomes are, again, unpredictable. When your wellness is contingent upon something external from you, it's just not controllable. So that means it goes the way you prefer, you will feel very good. It goes the way you don't want, you will feel badly. So that's probably one of the things. So again, a result connected to someone's self-image and value of self. And those are, a lot of them are self-generated. Whether it is getting a PhD, it's great to do that if you want to do that, whatever it is, getting mad, whatever it is. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's all self-generated. That's something that you've said or I've said, or and of course, we can't really fully control whether we will accomplish something. We can give it our very best.
Yeah. I like how you brought up that controllable thing, because especially in mindset talk, I feel like the adage, like, control what you can control, is something that's is said a lot. But what does that really mean when it comes to, being a high level competitor, being, mentally sound, having a great mindset? And I can tell, like, you have a great mindset just from hearing your testimony, your history about it. Where did that come from for you?
Well, I think it has to do with, in order to, I don't know, my mindset is okay. I think it's pretty good. Sure, I guess, maybe, but you're probably right. But I think that comes from failing. And I think it comes from trying to understand and learn and having difficulties, especially look at today's time. Okay, you go on Instagram, you look at these things. I don't spend much time on those things, but there's entrepreneurs. They want to have their own business. They want to be really, like, they have these things, but those things, they're not linear. So in other words, you mentioned PhD, right? PhD, okay, it's a difficult endeavor, but there's a system to that. You follow that system. You do every single thing. You're going to get it. You don't give up. You say, you know what? You say, you wake up tomorrow, like, I want to get a PhD. I want to be a doctor, whatever it is. I want to be a lawyer. Fine. You say, I'm going to follow this. You're going to get it. You want to be an entrepreneur. Some people that have certain goals. There's no system to that. And there are things you can do to increase your chances. Table tennis is the same. Table tennis means that there are certain things that you need to do to be competitive with other people. It doesn't mean you're going to win, but if you don't do those things, you have no chance. If that makes sense, it's like maybe 100. If you want to say there's 100 things you need to do, you got to do all 100, and then that puts you at the starting line. That means you're equal to all the other people that are already doing those things. So I don't know if there's an answer. So maybe there's no. I don't know if this framing is like the things that you're describing in some sense. Maybe the PhD is framed in terms of a question and an answer. The question is, how do you do it? They say, okay, here you go. Spend 8 years, this is how you do it. Some of the other stuff in life, that framing doesn't apply, because it's almost like a paradox, that the answer really is to live and try to be in the process of something.
Yeah. And you get better at coming back from failure by having failures, right? And in order to do that, you kind of have to go out and try something new, and something that I tell people a lot is, like, even if you're naturally gifted and you're killing the competition today, there's going to be a time in your life you're going to run into someone who's just as good or not better than you. Then what are you going to do then? Like what's your mindset going to do then? And did that ever happen to you in your career where you had to have that moment where like, oh man, like this isn't easy now. This isn't an easy ride anymore.
Yeah, and I think those are two that when you do difficult things in the short term, your long term is much better. When you do easy things in the short term, your long term is much more difficult.
Yeah.
But that does kind of go back to what we were saying, and these sort of absolutes are part of it. But like, you know, you look at even school. I failed out of school many times. But when you tell your, even exams, like people have to get these licenses, and you could say, I need to pass this license. But you can do two things. You can either say, all right, I'll take the exam, like the license, whatever it might be. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a therapist, whatever it is. Okay, there's all these exams. And either I will pass it on the first time, and I could say, hey, you know what? I took this exam. Yeah, I was able to pass it on the first time. Or I'll fail it 10 times. And then I could say, oh, you know what? I failed it 10 times, but I never gave up. So you could frame it in any way you want. But the point being, once you stay with that and give yourself an option, it's just a little bit easier. So when you, whatever the exam is, you say, okay, you know what? That's what I said when I had to take these state exams. Oh, you know what? If I fail it 4, 5, 6, 7 times, okay, I'll just take it again. I told him, take it again. No problem. I'll take it again. So then it's like, okay, no big deal. I'll do the best I can. Instead of saying, oh, if I fail, it's like, oh, this is like, again, like we were saying, connected to your well-being. So yeah, I think we all have those times where sort of we're human beings. We look at things and we're like, you know, it's like, okay, maybe an easy example, you know, the fitness. I don't know. I guess it's important. Wellness. So one of the goals I set, you know, 2023, I said, you know what, I'm going to walk 10 miles a day. So it's very hard for me to have a physical disability. It's really difficult for me. But I did it. Okay, fine. I walked for a year. It was very difficult. Then later on, okay, and this year, I was like, okay, you know, now I realized, oh, it's a little too much. They're saying, oh, it's good to do 6 miles a day. Okay. So in one point, I had COVID. And I said, okay, you know what? If I walk 10 miles with COVID, I was like, I'm so uncomfortable. It's the hardest thing I could possibly do. I was able to do it, fine. I was able to do it. But then, and here's where the point is, a couple of months later, I had the flu. And I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. I was like, I feel so terrible. I can't even get out of bed. So I'm going to walk 10 miles. I couldn't do it. I did 4. I thought I would be dead. I could not do, there was nothing in this world. I could take another step. It's okay. You know, so it's like, what does that mean? Okay, now I can look back, you know, I had COVID and walked 10 miles, which might be crazy. Okay, fine. Now I try to do it when I had the flu, but I couldn't do it. So all of these things, what do they really mean to somebody? It just means that you just do the best you can, you know, and that's what my coach said a lot too, you know, so you're still going to be okay regardless of an outcome, you know? Yeah,
man. So, okay, I just wrapping my brain around. You had.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No. You had COVID and you decided to walk 10 miles. You know, like, and then you got the flu and decided to do it again. It's those are very intentional choices to kind of put yourself in a place of, I would say, hardship, right? And yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, intentional. Yeah, exactly. And I think, I don't know if you're alluding to that there are some things in life that are not intentional that just happen to you that you can't control.
A little bit, but what I was leaning towards, like, you know, when you lift weights, right? Like, you can't just lift the bar forever. Like, as soon as that starts getting easy, you got to add more tension. You got to add more weight. You got to put yourself a little bit towards that stretch through discomfort. And I think something that people ask a lot is like, well, how can I create that outside the gym, right? It's easy to make that analogy in the gym, but what do I do in life? And I think you just presented a very real example of how you can train your brain like you do with muscles. Like, you intentionally chose to push yourself through this hardship, work through the thoughts, and still be okay, right?
Yeah, making some really good points and all this. And it's interesting, when you do therapy, it's exactly what happens. Somebody brings something and it just connects to something that, again, that's just in the science of things. So, you know, it's good to quantify things in some way. You know, you look at someone's life, let's say, you know, put them on a scale of, I don't know, 0 to 10. 10 is their best life, 0 is the worst. Maybe they say they're at a 5. You're absolutely right. You can't just go from 5. It's the opposite. You can't go from 5 and then tomorrow you're at 10. Either you won't be able to sustain it or it might hurt you. So it's like, okay, how do you go to 5.1? Like you're saying, it's like that weight. You have the bar, you're at a 5. Okay, maybe if I do 50 reps with no weights at some point, maybe I'll get a 5.1. But now, okay, I'm at a 5.1. Maybe I need to add weight. So that's what life is, sort of these things where goals happen by doing a million small things, not one big thing. And it seems like that's what you're saying to some extent. I think that makes a lot of sense. Sure. That's an important point. And when you do difficult things, the other things you're able to manage better. So for example, again, in this world, we can have access to anything we want, right? Like, it doesn't matter, alcohol, whatever, we can go get alcohol, we can go, I don't know where, Las Vegas, we can go gambling, we can meet women or men or whatever people prefer, we can do anything we want. Food, I have a difficulty with food. If I don't, so I have to write it down. I have to really put attention on it. I have to, I don't eat till 12, or then I don't eat 3 hours before. So I'm very particular in those things. But the point being, you have those things in this world. So what do? Meaning me and you. So when you talk about even addiction, there's accessibility and novelty. That means experiencing something new and having access to something. Obviously, like we were just saying, the accessibility is anything we want, we can do. Actually, I have an app. I think it's called Gold Belly, right? Where it's like you can get anything you want from anywhere in the world. You look at stuff, whatever, you pay $500 if you have the money, or all different prices, you get what you want. So you try to do, there's a good book about this too, Dopamine Nation. Point being, you try to do the opposite, right? So for me, everybody's different. There are things I identify that I don't like at all. One is sauna. People love sauna. I hate it. So I do it. Actually, they say if you spend 57 minutes to an hour and 12 minutes a week, you diminish 60% all-cause mortality. If you stay in the sauna, and that means stroke, dementia, Alzheimer's, heart disease. I didn't know that, but the point being, I do that because I don't like it. They say if you do 100 push-ups a day, it's like, it's so good for you. I couldn't even do, when I started, I couldn't do 5. I could probably do 300 or 400 now. I do it many years. So, okay. So you take 4 things that you don't like. The walking, that's why I walk 6 miles a day. And you do those things. Now it's like, okay, you can experience a little bit of difficulty. And then when difficult things come to you, not only does it build confidence, jiu-jitsu, that's another thing. For me, it's so difficult. I practice jiu-jitsu because it's so hard, physically with my, okay, you do that at least 3 times a week. So you do those things and it's like, okay, you're doing some difficult things. You start being able to manage the difficulty, if that makes sense. Being able to deal with difficult feeling states. Because the final thing I would say about that, again, we can always go in any direction, is that normally, and they say this right, in Shaolin Kung Fu, they say this, that the things you don't want in life, the things you don't, they're always going to come to you. You can't get rid of them. They're always going to come to you. It's very hard. The things you do want, they're elusive. They're hard to, the comfort, the connection with somebody, whatever it is, you want to, like we said, a college degree, whatever, you want to get the right career. These things are the things you want, they're hard to get. The things you don't want, the anxiety, the discomfort, maybe depression, they'll come to you very quickly and they won't be so easy to get rid of.
Man, that makes me just think about the amount of value from working hard and accomplishing your goals. When something's just given to you, right? The value is decreased by so much, right? Because there's not a lot of emotional investment into obtaining that thing. And I always somehow end up on this conversation when I talk to just high level performers and athletes, stuff like that, is what is the effects of the participation award in today's young athletes?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And I think those are a good question to answer because probably there's a balance in everything. But you know what, James, if we even step back for a second, right? We look at, okay, I'm sitting here fine. I'm a gold medalist, fine. I got some college degrees. All right, I was homeless. I have a disability. Okay, all that stuff. Me and you and everybody, we experience the human condition. Like what it is to be a human being. And those are things no matter what. Like me, you, we can't really avoid those things. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to address in some sense. Like, of course, you talk about therapy. I'm a therapist. And you can look at it and somebody doesn't know anything, like, oh, wow, look at the, such. And yeah, some of my therapy sessions are outstanding. Some are terrible. I've learned I had sessions that were so bad. And I learned from those things. And they're probably somewhere in between. Same thing in table tennis. I've taken losses. I've taken so many losses to where, when I played in that lost battalion, I couldn't win a point. We had a play. We started at 4:00 and we had the table till 10. I would go in there I'd wait. About 5:30, I'd play a match, lose right away. 21-1, couldn't even get maybe 1 point.
Yeah.
I'd sit again for like 3 hours, play another match, lose, and I did that for about a year and a half. So it's not like you just come in. I've taken tremendous losses, but at the time, I think the key is exactly what you were saying, is that thing where it's like, in the end, you continuously keep pushing, whether it's school. Again, I never went to high school. I never went to junior high school. How can I graduate with honors from like NYU? How's that possible? No trick.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I'm an average intelligent person. I'm not like above average, but I just sit and I say, okay. I show up 30 minutes early. I sit in the front of the classroom. I ask questions. I talk to the professor in the middle. Okay, what, is there something I can do better? So there's no trick except that, okay, maybe in table tennis, okay, you need some talent in somewhere, but the talent also, you have to love what you do. But to answer your question, but I got off track. Probably a balance. Maybe that's not the best thing to, you look at the martial art of jiu-jitsu, to get belts in jiu-jitsu is very difficult. It takes, to get a black belt, it's like, 8 to 14 years. It's not, they just don't hand out belts. And I'm not saying that, again, for kids, sometimes that's good to get people, but the point being, I think you're right that there should be a balance and you feel better. Like I said, I've achieved a lot of things in table tennis. The best thing for me, like the feeling state, the best thing that I've ever achieved was I was able to do my first undergrad degree. I was like, wow, it's so amazing to go from not being in high school to not not going to junior high school into, I was like, wow, like that. And that was so hard for me. So it's personal to people, but again, we all have a shared human experience, and again, there's nothing wish I could say I'm special in some way, but no, it's sort of, we all experience these things, depression, setbacks, like all these things. It's how we sort of address them. And sometimes you got to sit back. Sometimes you can't push. Sometimes you got to sit. You got to take a break. I don't know the answer, but we're all in we're all in this world together. Nobody gets out of this alive, I think, right?
That's usually how it ends up, right?
Yeah.
Man, that's so good. That's so good. And something that resonates in everything that you're saying is, at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to a choice. It's the perspective we take something. It's how we respond to things. It's how we push ourselves. It's choosing the easy path versus the hard path. And just hearing you tell your story, I don't think you've ever taken an easy path, man. It sounds like you've chosen to push yourself and continue to move forward. And I think that's where that's what separates, like my example back in the beginning, where eventually you're going to reach a spot where everyone's just as good as you or not better. So what's separating you to continue to compete? Forward,
Okay. They did a study on that, which I'll mention in a second. Let's mention that first, and then I'll go to something else. They wanted to know the difference between the top 5 tennis players in the world and the top 25.
Okay.
And did all this research, and they kind of figured out it's how they're relating to themselves when they lose a point. Like, in other words, they lose a point, they're very positive. Like, I'm going to get the next point. I really enjoy playing this. I'm making it very basic, but they stay positive and they stay connected. That makes a big difference. So, in other words, and that goes back to the second thing. One, how you relate to yourself and the people that you surround yourself with. I'm not saying people are bad or good in any way, although maybe, that could be possible, but that makes a big difference. And that goes into the second thing, is what I feel from, again, I'm an old man, I'm almost 50 years old, but having a mentor, like, if you want to use that word, like my coach, again, his name is Sean Neal, he's Olympian and all that. Okay, we have a lot of different viewpoints. I'm not saying you take any topic, we'll probably have opposite viewpoints, but the stuff that he's done, again, he doesn't need recognition or anything, but the things that he's done, from staying up, we're sitting 2 a.m, he's helping me study for an exam. I could give you 100 things, but the point is, you have somebody guiding you, that's kind of helping you a little bit. You really need that. And that's what you try to aspire to. You want to be able to. So for me, I look at some of the things that he's doing. It's okay. I never make it like competition. Am I better than him? Is he better? No, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to try to do my best. And then I remember, oh, wait a second, he did this. And then I have times where I was argumentative with him, and I was like, okay, he did this. So it's like you kind of learn, but the point being, having somebody guide you a little. They have studies like that too. They say, like, talk about crime. They have a big inner city study now, and it goes back to parenting. When you don't have 2 parents in the home, that's what the study says. Not what they're like. It has a big effect because there's a reason of father has an effect. Again, this is what the science is saying, not what I'm saying. And you kind of need that, I think. It was important. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I've read those studies as well. It's just that there is a breakdown in these struggling communities where the nuclear family has been broken down. And I think there is an importance to having two parents in the home. Not just for the kids, but also for the parents' sake. Like you said, as humans, we also need to know when to sit down. We also need to know when to take a rest. And if you're doing it all by yourself, especially as a parent, if you're by yourself, you don't get that break,
Sure.
and that can make it harder, and being a therapist yourself, I mean, you definitely know that kids are hyper aware and they're very sensitive to their surroundings and environments. They can pick up on things that we believe that we're not showing off as adults, right? But they can still sense like the anxiety. They can still sense the tiredness and exhaustion. So I think that was a really, really good point, man. So we are reaching the end of the 30 minutes, man. This flew by so fast.
I felt it was like 5 minutes. I will comment and say, yeah, that is in child psychology. There's a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, Listen So Kids Will Talk. It says exactly what you're saying. Kids look at what they go by how they feel. And that goes back to the second thing, the last thing maybe we end on of Plato said, be kind to people. And people always remember, they don't remember anything you say, but exactly what you're saying, how you make them feel. And when you do that, even the most difficult people, you try to practice that. It's not easy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, dude. I do appreciate that. So is there anything I can do to support you?
I'm putting out a autobiography. It's called The Book of Tahl. You can probably find it on Amazon. I think people get a lot out of it.
Dude, I appreciate that. Thank you for being on the show, man. It's been a lot.
But thank you, James. Thank you for taking the time to have me on here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tahl, so much for coming on the show. And if you want to grab a copy of his book, it's called The Book of Tahl, From Homelessness to Paralympic Gold, and just incredible deep dive into his testimony and his journey to the Paralympics. Once again, thank you guys for joining us on this episode of the Bullish podcast. If you are an athlete or a musician looking for that X factor to take your performance to the next level, reach out to us for mental performance coaching, www.bullishdrive.com. I'd love to chat, and always remember, it starts with you and your destiny is waiting. We'll see you next week. Peace.